Welcome back, it's Zion from Uke On Demand, and this week we're teaching the theme song to Up, Married Life. What you just heard was it being played on a high G ukulele, but this tutorial is compatible with both low G and high G tuning. So to begin, we're going to start out with our index finger on the 3rd fret. I'm going to show you 2 ways to do this first few notes. But just so you can hear one more time how it goes before we dive into the tutorial, I'll play it once very slowly. And to play that part, we are going to start out with the index finger on the 3rd fret of the A. Pick that once. The reason why we use index finger is so that the pinky can easily reach the 7th fret of A, which is next. And then we simply take the finger off and pick the 3rd fret of A one more time. Now there is an alternative way to play this section. It requires a little less reach. Say if your fingers are a little bit shorter and that reach isn't very comfortable, you can do this. You can swap out the 3rd fret of A for the 8th fret of E. So you would be making this position with your middle finger on the 8th fret of E and index on the 7th fret of A, and you simply pick the 8th fret of A, or 8th fret of E, 7th fret A, back to 8th fret E. So that is an alternative way you can play this section. The only downside is when we come to play that chord, the C major 7, we have to jump all the way back down here. So it's a give and take. Whichever is most comfortable for you is what you should play. However you play those first 3 notes, the next chord that we're going into is a C major 7. Just think of it like your regular C chord on the 3rd fret of A, but down 1 fret. So it's on the 2nd fret of A. Just like that. Nice, easy, simple chord. And you're just going to hold it for the entire measure. When we go into the 3rd measure on the screen, we're simply going to pick the 2 strings in the middle, the C string and E string. And then, after that, we're going to go into the next trio of notes right here. We're going to pick the same thing, that 3-7, but instead of ending with a 3, it'll be a 2. Like that. And if you're doing this the high way, instead of 3-7-2, you would go 8, the 8th fret of E, if that is, the 7th fret of A, and then the 7th fret of E. Like that. If you want to do the higher version up here instead. As written on the tabs, it just looks like this. Just like that. However you play it, the next chord we're going into is the easiest chord on the ukulele. It is an A minor 7, also known as a C6, and it's simply all open strings. There is no fingering to deal with. It's a beautiful chord because it's so easy. And after we strum all those open strings, we're just going to hold it until we get into the last group of notes. Now, With these, it's going to be down low. There is no efficient higher option for here. It's just going to stay up at this end of the fretboard, and it's just going to be the open A, 3rd fret of A, back to open A. Now, if you have a little bit of experience with the ukulele and picking, you might want to do a hammer-on pull-off combo for these groups of 3 notes. Like that. And essentially a hammer-on is when you pick, and while that note is still resonating, you hammer your finger onto the fretboard to get that new note. Just like that. And then the pull-off is the exact opposite. Once you pick the note, while that note is still resonating, you're just going to pull your finger off the fretboard to reveal that string behind it, the note behind it. So you can treat these groups of 3 notes before the chords with like a hammer-on pull-off combo, but only if you're comfortable with it. If you need to pick each note individually, if that's a little bit easier for you, that's totally fine as well. And so that's just an option to make it a little easier on you, but it's not a requirement. All right, so before you go into the next bar and play the first few notes, let's go back to the beginning of this bar and play it together very slowly, starting with the 3rd fret of A. And the next, just for reference, the next chord would be C5. But before we go into the bar, let's play it again one more time, but this time just a hair faster. And now let's dive into bar 2. So for bar 2, we're going to begin in a C5. And that's just going to look like this. It's going to be the open G string, open C string, ring finger on the 3rd fret of E, and we're not going to pick the A string at all. When we strum, if you're using your thumb, you will land on the A string but not play it. Or if you're using multiple fingers, you're just playing those G, C, and E strings. And just going to strum that once. And the next part of the song starts to get a little bit higher. We've got a couple of those notes on the screen. And to begin, we're going to pick the A string and then come up to this position. We're going to have our index finger flattened over the 5th fret of the E string and A string, ring finger on the 7th fret of the A, and middle finger on the 6th fret of the C. And we're not going to play the G string at all. We're just going to strum the bottom 3 strings. So if you're using your thumb, start from the C string, strum down. If you're using multiple fingers, just do those bottom 3 strings. All right, so, and after we strum that, we're going to pick the 5th fret of A by itself. So go ahead and leave your fingers where they are. And then pick the 5th fret of E. Your finger is already barring it. And this is why we left our fingers where they are, because we're about to go back into the same chord. So we're just going to strum that again. 5th fret of A. 3rd fret of A. Slowly making our way down. And then we're going to go into a regular D chord. And you probably are already familiar with the D chord, but in case you aren't, it's just the 2nd fret of C, 2nd fret of G, and the 2nd fret of E all together. And you strum all the strings. So let's go back to the beginning of this bar and play it together very slowly, starting at that C5. And one more time, a little slower, or a little faster. And that's how to play the first part of Married Life. To get the full tutorial and all the tabs, head over to ukondemand.com and subscribe below so you don't miss our upcoming fingerstyle tutorials. We'll see you next time.